monthly webinar, Driving Success. This month is in celebration of Work Zone Safety Week, and we'll be talking about increased risks that occur when faced with the work zone. We will learn why the safety risk increase and how to help combat this, ultimately leading to a better safety and higher driver retention. Today we have myself, Emily, the Director of Solution Development from DQM and TripDog, and John Van Nortwick, Director of Safety from our partner Drivewyze, speaking today. Just a quick note that we will be having a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to type any questions you have during our presentation into the Q&A chat. So let's go ahead and jump into the presentation. So work zones may not be something that is your top worry when dealing with fleet safety. So things like tying down loads properly, drivers completing DVARs, or even drivers speeding may be some of the most common things that you think about when you're managing your fleet. But the reality is that work zones pose a huge risk to drivers. So these statistics from the FMCSA clearly show how much of an impact commercial vehicles have regarding safety on the roads. So 33% of crashes involved a commercial motor vehicle, and that increased 16% from 2018 to 2019. So that's a pretty big increase of crashes. Even more, there were 250 total crashes that were in a work zone, leaving 842 total work zone fatalities in 2019 alone. So clearly we can see there is a challenge here, and there needs to be a focus on how to decrease those numbers. So what is causing these high crashes and the fatality numbers that we're seeing? So in a work zone, there are some additional obstacles a driver has to maneuver through. Things like narrow lanes, uneven roads, unpredictable traffic patterns with sudden stops makes driving through a work zone stressful, not only for an automobile, but even more for those who are trying to maneuver an 80,000-pound truck. So how do we reduce these risks and lower that percentage we talked about earlier? So some of the suggestions the FMCSA has is to reduce your speed, pay attention to road signs, plan your route accordingly, avoid any distractions, move to an open lane, and leave a larger gap in between vehicles. So those seem like fairly easy things to correct, right? But the reality of these easy fixes are not so easy when, again, you're trying to maneuver a large 80,000-pound truck in a highly congested area that has gotten even more congested due to a work zone. So, even when I'm driving my little SUV, when I see that road work ahead sign, I'm kind of like, oh no, here we go, right? So, the reality of the situation is these changes aren't so easy. Reading a road sign that is only posted about 100 yards back in advance isn't really enough time for a driver to properly react, especially because the other drivers on the road don't want to be that one stuck behind the big truck that is on a lane that's reduced to only one lane. And the other issue with planning your route is sometimes unexpected work zones pop up on your GPS, leaving your driver virtually no time to reroute. And on top of that, they have the difficulties of only having access to certain roads depending on the location and the size of the truck, which can be a really big stressor for many when you're on a tight schedule. So clearly we are faced with some obvious challenges here, and the stats we talked about earlier show that the work zone can cause some major safety hazards for your drivers and those working the roads. So I'm going to go ahead and turn over to John, who is going to help bring some really awesome solutions to you to help decrease those crash and those fatality numbers and ultimately increase your driver satisfaction and retention.
Great. Thanks, Emily. It's a little bit about who Drivewyze is. Drivewyze is best known for our pre-clear way station bypass service and our proactive safety alerts. But at the same time, Drivewyze has become North America's largest connected truck platform, which is really cool and really plays into what we're talking about today because it's that connection to the infrastructure, which in this case is the DOT agencies at each of the states who provide us that work zone information, and we can provide those early warnings to to our drivers. Our vision is simple: a safe, efficient, and sustainable commercial transportation system with no crash fatalities. And it really drives all of our decisions, and part of why we've made our basic service absolutely free. So through our partners, we can get Drivewyze free at no cost. There's no strings attached. It's a great service. So building on what Emily was talking about, incidents happen and things change. So your standard road signs are great, but if it's weather, or the greatest example is work zones, they can't constantly be changing those. So you get those cones right before the work zone, but that's not, especially for a large truck, in time to allow you to move over and get in the right lane. That lane may change. So work zones are a great example of these locations where traditional roadside signage isn't always readily available, and very often not with enough notice to allow a driver to adjust accordingly. So this is what we're going to kind of focus on today and show you what Drivewyze has to offer to help you with those work zones. Just a little history of our safety program. So we debuted our first pre-clear in 2013. We got integrated with all the ELDs in 2015, started providing in-cab safety in 2018. And then Safety Plus we introduced in 2020, which we'll touch on a little bit today, which is kind of our add-on service to our free product. 2023, we really separated out our Drivewyze free product, agency sponsored, along with some of our own sponsored alerts that is absolutely free to all the drivers. And I think it's kind of moves along the line with the safety evolution in general. We had ADAS, adaptive cruise control and forward collision warnings, and those kind of real-time alerts or interventions that the truck could do. And the cameras kind of came along, and that allowed it for the post-event coaching to improve drivers' behavior. And Drivewyze then came out with our Safety Plus and Drivewyze free products, which give you proactive alerts. So actually getting in front of known risky locations, of which work zones are one of. So how Drivewyze works. Drivewyze, we use the same technology infrastructure for Drivewyze free and Safety Plus as we do for our pre-clear way station, and it really focuses around geofence. So our way station has no transponder. It's all software based. For the way station, we set up a series of geofences that start 2 miles out. The first alert lets the driver know that the way station is coming, giving the driver ample time to move over to the right lane. The next alert at 1 mile will provide driving instructions, so whether to pull into the way station or bypass. And then we capture in and out. We create in and out fences to get more analytics, so you can see how much time you're spending at those way stations. It's a very similar process with our alerts. This safety alerts, in this case, this is a rollover example. So we give the rollover warning ample time before an exit. We let them know that it's exit 1B as an example. So if the driver knows he's taking that exit, he can get over, slow down. And then we actually capture with another geofence. Doesn't create an alert in the cab, but we capture speed data and behavior information so that we can then report on that back to the fleet. So, and rollover is one of our standard Drivewyze free alerts, along with the work zones that we'll get into more detail. So our partners, state agencies, won't invest in this process if it's not effective. So we've gone through a lot of tests with our fleet partners as well as the state agencies, and there's just some examples of those stats. So 17% reduction in speeding incidents around high rollover areas compared to non-alerted drivers. This was done with one of the North America's largest fleets. 19% reduction in hard braking events before unexpected slowdowns, which work zone is essentially that kind of a slowdowns. This was high-risk collision zones conducted with the Georgia DOT in the summer of 2020, which also compared drivers who did or did not get those alerts. And that was with over 500,000 vehicle visits, who were able to demonstrate that trucks who received the alerts reduced the number of hard braking across all 10 monitored locations. So it really does, the alerts do work. In North Carolina, with the work zone study, 7% of drivers slowed down after receiving an alert from Drivewyze. Quote from North Carolina DOT: by warning drivers of congestion in real time, drivers have more time to safely reduce their speed and risk of being involved in a crash. So the alerts work, and it's a great opportunity for people to take advantage of that and at least start with those free services, and you can move forward with the Safety Plus. We integrate with all the ELDs, so the driver doesn't have to get distracted. It's going to pop up on his ELD screen and give him that alert. Just to go over some of the other ones in addition to the work zone that we're talking about today, there's low bridge, unexpected slowdown, high rollover, a service vehicle head. So the state agencies will let us know if somebody's working on those steep grades, a variety of different warnings. And then with Safety Plus, you can add weather, speed violation zones. So we look at your MICMIS data and all the MICMIS data and identify where violations are being given for speeding and cargo theft, and then custom zones, which we'll touch on as well, because a lot of our customers use the custom zones to kind of add on to our work zone features. But what is Drivewyze free? So we have both agency sponsored and Drivewyze sponsored alerts within Drivewyze free. This is the free element of that we talked about. So the agency sponsored alerts, state DOTs, sudden slowdown, unexpected slowdown, virtual alerts and agency virtual signs. This could be anything, service vehicles, again, the active work zones. And then just a couple quotes from North Carolina DOT: by warning drivers of congestion in real time, drivers have more time to safely reduce their speed and risk of being involved in a crash. So in North Carolina, we have 300 dynamic message signs to communicate information to drivers, but these signs aren't always at locations where an incident has occurred. Drivewyze helps us reach drivers at the exact point where an incident has happened, so drivers are aware of what's ahead and can adjust their driving behavior, which is what we're talking about with the work zones, because those constantly changing. Safety, safety, safety. So this is from the Georgia DOT. Our focus is in reducing commercial vehicle-related injuries and fatalities. It's mutually a top priority for the Georgia Department of Transportation and Drivewyze. And kind of building on some of the stats you had in 2020, 857 people were killed and 44,240 in work zone crashes. Over 33% of fatal crashes in work zones involved a CMV. So it's very important, and we want to help you avoid those statistics. So right now we're working with state agencies on both longer term road closures or trapped or work zone areas, as well as dynamic, so almost real time, directly from the field. So when they create a work zone or change a lane, we get it real time. So it's really exciting. We're doing that in Oregon and California, and I've got some stats on that. But these are the long term are daily updates that we get, and then the dynamic is near real time, where we're actually seeing when a lane change closes, and we can provide those alerts in time for the trucks to be able to get to a safe lane or slow down properly. And then just an example of additional things that we do on top of the more structured work zone. The I-695 bridge collapse. We started working with local authorities early that morning to reroute drivers. So that first warning we created was at the 695 and MD2, and then we had a final warning northbound. We also added additional high restriction alerts because the change of driving pattern caused some other issues. So 2 of the approved alternate routes to cross the river utilized the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel and the Fort McHenry Tunnel. So both tunnels have restrictions on vehicle height. So we notified drivers about those. And we've just done that with different, emergency situations across our history. So just a good example of the kind of work zone, or in this case, road closure that we could help alert your drivers on. And then every month we provide results to our state agency partners. None of your actual data gets transferred to them. So this isn't like our way station bypass where we have to let them know what your DOT number is and exchange some data. We just give them aggregated data. So your truck number, there's nothing about your fleet or your driver that's transferred over to them. We just give them these kind of bulk numbers, but I think they're just really cool. 40,241 unique vehicles received work zone alerts in Ohio last month. 21,789 unique vehicles in North Carolina. And with our testing that we just started in California on these real-time work zones, 1,730 alerts generated from one district with 100 different lane closures. So it's really dynamic, changing those. That was just in 3 days. So it's really cool stuff. So beyond the state agencies that we get the work zones for, we also have custom zones. So kind of how we kick off the custom zones is, what about that pole outside of your customer's terminal? So you can create a custom zone for a specific scenario, and that could be a local work zone that we're not getting from a state agency or some other kind of road closure. But just wanted to kind of touch on how that process works. So you can go into our system. It's all GUI. You just click what type of risk zone you're going to create. You drag and drop your geofence. The arrows tell you what direction that truck's going. That's where it provides the alert. The red zone is going to capture the speed after it got that message. You can give it a custom message for that. So slow down, high winds, and then you can publish that, and it'll be available to your drivers within an hour. They'll start seeing those custom alerts, and that can be for anything, but we're going to focus on some of them for the work zones, and we'll give you some other examples as well. Well, the custom alerts for work zone that these are actual customers have created. Watch speed in work zones. Pennsylvania will actually use cameras to check speed in the work zone, which we know is a higher fine, is in addition to just the speed violation that's going to go into your CSA. So they created a custom alert for those specific scenarios. Another customer that did it with police presence in the work zone, high violation. So just reminding drivers to be a little careful. And this can be for all sorts of those kind of unique scenarios that your fleet runs into, whether it's customer service and driver satisfaction. So letting the driver know how to get into the entrance for a customer, or just making sure you've been getting complaints from the customer because they're going too fast in the yard. So it can get reminders on speed limits in the yard. A lot of safety and compliance opportunities. So we have got customers that don't want anybody using the lane restricted areas going through Atlanta. There's a lot of predatory towing companies out there that are towing trucks. So highlighting some of those areas and giving drivers warning when they're around those. We have customers that use it for helping to drive down their CSA scores. So we had a customer that noticed they were getting a lot of tire violations in a specific way station in Maine. They had just gotten new technology that was able to see the tire pressure and those vehicles coming through there. So they went ahead and created a custom zone, just like I showed you, 2 exits ahead, and had their drivers double check those. So just some additional examples. And then for all these different Drivewyze free zones, we give you analytics that you can use to then drill in and really identify where you might be having some issues. So just a lot of opportunities to build on those, and including unique work zone areas with specific data. So kind of like we saw with the creation of the custom zone, you've got your alert zone, and then we can show you the speed of the driver till you get to the actual violation zone, and that's where we're going to capture that speed data. So just a lot of opportunities. Again, the work zone that I talked about, that'll give you the things like the bridge crash that had the lane closures, or the standard work zones or the dynamic work zones where we're having lane closures in California on a regular basis. Those are all part of our Drivewyze free. So, really encourage people to sign up for that to begin with. And then if you want to look at some deeper analysis for some of the custom work zones, that's always something you can do in the future. But for just your basic work zone, Drivewyze free is just a no-brainer, because it really doesn't cost anything. There's no other pop-ups. It's no strings attached. We just provide that service. So it's something we do with the state agencies to hopefully make everybody a little safer.
Great. Well, thank you, John. That was really awesome, especially with the Drivewyze free. I think, it's a really great solution that you guys offer to everyone. So we do have some time for some Q&A. So if you have any questions that you haven't typed in yet, go ahead and type those into the Q&A. But we can start off with, can you share a customer story of how Drivewyze has impacted their operations?
One of the unique ones that we have is a customer in Chicago. They actually utilized our custom zones to help measure. They have to create reports for their customers on in and out times for pickup and deliveries. So actually created a custom zone, because we track the time you're in the red zone that you create with your custom zone. We track the time you're in that zone. So he creates that where the drivers have to go through, and he gets the in time, he gets the out time, he gets the total time within the zone. So I think that's a unique one. He's also done a great job of, there's a lot of things going on in Chicago, a lot of work zones or road closure, lane closures that happen dynamically. And since he's got so many trucks going into Chicago, he's able to just really hone in on some of those unique situations and create those kind of work zones and different alerts for his drivers in those tough driving situations when he's sending, 18-wheelers into Chicago downtown. So I think that's a great way to utilize those alerts with those kind of difficult driving situations.
Cool. We have a question that says, is the work zone alerts from California in all counties?
It's not in all counties yet. We're doing pilots with specific counties in California, and then that'll broaden out based on the initial results. I think that'll spread pretty quick because it's been pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean the stats that you showed within just 3 days. I mean that's crazy. And driving through California, basically just driving through a giant work zone. So
It's
I
amazing. I
can't.
think everywhere, and I think a lot of the funding, that the highways have gotten, there's work zones everywhere you go. And in my little small town in Oklahoma, they're redoing all the roads in there, and
Yeah.
it's difficult just in a car to get over and to know which lane. Sometimes it's the right lane, sometimes it's the left lane, and in the car it's difficult to get over without causing any kind of problem. So, you got to be really sympathetic to those drivers out there and coming through town in a truck to get to that Walmart. It's nice to have those alerts.
Yeah. And you did kind of touch on it a little bit, but are you relying on Drivewyze users to report the work zones, or how are you receiving that information?
We're getting them directly from the state DOTs, and then in those cases where the states are partnering with their actually companies that are doing the construction, we're getting those dynamically from the field routed to Drivewyze. So it's coming from the state agencies.
Okay, great. It looks like we have a couple people typing, so I'll let them finish their questions.
No tough questions.
Um, and then you did touch on the Drivewyze free. That's for the work zone alerts, but the custom alerts, that's for an additional service, correct?
That is part of our Safety Plus service, which is there is a small cost for that part, but the Drivewyze free is absolutely no strings attached, and we can get you in touch with some of our customers on both products. But one of the things I like about the trucking industry and trucking safety in particular is, with a lot of industries, they don't share secrets between different companies, but with trucking safety, they're more than willing to talk about it. Everybody's got a common goal to try to keep everybody safer and keep those trucks on the road. And so our customers are more than willing to share what success they've had, how they've implemented those things, and talk to you about best practices with with those services. So that's one of the things I love about the trucking industry in general. It's everybody's works together to try to be safe as possible.
Yeah, we've been going to a lot of conferences and stuff last year and this year, and it's definitely a collaborative effort for sure. We definitely see that as well. We have a question with, are width restrictions included in the work zone alerts? Many companies specialize in oversized loads. And then also, are you seeing success outside of metro areas, specifically like the Midwest, South Dakota, Wyoming, those not metro hub areas?
Absolutely. I think a lot of our best success is in those areas. And a lot of times that's when the drivers are kind of, not focused as much. And then the alerts are really helpful and seeing those work zones coming ahead and getting to the right lane, or knowing that they've got a reroute. And the weight restrictions is part of our standard work zones, or Drivewyze free alerts. And then, we typically focus on some of the larger, well-documented ones. But then one of the nice things is, especially with Drivewyze free, we're getting more and more fleets involved, and more fleets. In fact, Sperl Trucking and some of our largest fleets have a lot of detailed information around in the Northeast, where there's a lot of low bridges. And as we get that information, we validate that data, make sure that it's accurate. Weight restrictions in Chicago, there's some very not well weight restrictions in Chicago. We take that data, make sure that it's accurate, and we make those available to all of our customers. So even though it may start out as a custom zone or something that's specific to that customer and their where they actually travel and where their pickups and deliveries are outside of normal truck routes, we do make those available with their permission to the entire fleet. And again, kind of going back to that camaraderie and everybody working together to make things safer. They're always for the sharing that data.
Yeah. And then we have a question that says, do you give alerts for roadside inspections, and can we get alerts for accidents that cause road closures?
If the state DOT has those accidents, we'll get those sudden slowdowns, which is a good example of one that we'll get for a specific accident. We're coming out with a vehicle on the side of the road that's been pulled over, so that would include a roadside inspection rather than a way state inspection. So that roadside inspection, if one of the trucks that we have, we can see that their GPSs, they're no longer moving, but they're on a major highway. That'll become an alert, and that's on our roadmap right now. That'll be coming out this summer. So we do include those options, and then we're continually expand. And again, more people that sign up, the better coverage we have across the board, and it kind of builds on itself. So we really encourage everyone to join.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, John, for your time, and thank you everyone for attending. We will be sending out a recording to everyone as well as information on Drivewyze free. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to the DQM VLC team and respond to that email with the recording, and we'll be sure to get you in touch with our team from Drivewyze to make sure that we get you guys, everyone set up for Drivewyze free, because it's a no-brainer to have it, right?
Yep.
So awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.